Have you ever stopped to think about the power that a prayer can have in your life? Today, we are going to talk about the incredible Prayer of Jabez, one of the shortest and most powerful passages in the Bible, capable of transforming stories and bringing purpose. In this video, you will discover how this prayer, hidden amidst genealogies, can be the key to overcoming challenges, receiving blessings, and experiencing God's care in your life. But before we start, I want to invite you to do something. If this topic has already sparked your curiosity, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any inspiring content like this. And don't forget to leave your like because it helps us reach even more people with messages of faith and transformation. Now, get ready to dive into this incredible journey. And Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, and his mother called his name Jabez, saying, "Because I bore him in pain." 1 Chronicles 4:9. Amid a long list of names that make up the genealogy of Judah, an unusual pause emerges. It's as if the biblical narrative stops for a moment to tell us the story of someone special, Jabez. But who was he? And why does his brief mention carry such profound significance? The story of Jabez teaches us that it doesn't matter how we start, but how we choose to relate to God. Jabez was born into a context marked by pain. His name, which literally means one who causes suffering, reflects what his mother experienced while bringing him into the world. Imagine carrying that name every day, constantly reminded that your very existence was tied to a moment of affliction. How many of us also carry marks from the past that unfairly define what others expect from us? Perhaps it was a harsh word, a failure, or even a label that seems impossible to shed. But Jabez did not conform to the weight of his name. He refused to let his identity be defined by the circumstances of his birth. This teaches us something profound. We are not prisoners of what happened to us in the past. God can always rewrite our story when we turn to Him with faith and sincerity. In the historical context of the time, names were highly symbolic and often determined a person's destiny. To the society around him, Jabez seemed destined to live a limited and difficult life. Yet instead of resigning himself to this, he decided to seek God. This decision was a turning point in his life, and it is here that his story begins to stand out. It's important to note that the Bible describes him as more honorable than his brothers. And yes, what does this mean? It wasn't because of wealth, fame, or power, but because Jabez did something his brothers apparently didn't. He placed his total trust in God. He prayed, and his prayer was so powerful and sincere that it was recorded as an example for all future generations. And here's the connection to our lives. How often do we feel trapped by circumstances that seem beyond our control? Perhaps you see yourself as someone who, because of past mistakes or current limitations, believes there isn't much you can offer. But Jabez shows us that change begins with a prayer that acknowledges God's ability to do the impossible, to transform what seems to be a barrier into an opportunity for growth. Jabez chose to seek a personal relationship with God, instead of limiting himself to the expectations imposed by society or even his own family. He teaches us that we don't have to be defined by circumstances or by the words others have spoken over us. If we are willing to turn to God, He can change our story. I invite you to reflect on this. Are you carrying a name or an identity that doesn't reflect who God wants you to be? Have you been settling for less than what God can do for you? Oh, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me, and that you would keep me from evil, that I may not cause pain. 1 Chronicles 4:10. The prayer of Jabez is a rare and precious example in the Bible. Amid the list of names that make up the genealogy of Judah, his words echo as a bold declaration of faith and total dependence on God. It consists of only 2 verses, but within them lies a spiritual depth that continues to transform lives to this day. Jabez begins his prayer with a simple yet powerful request: "Oh, that you would bless me indeed." He does not ask for riches, success, or human recognition. He asks for God's blessing, and here is the main point. Jabez's request transcends any earthly possession. For Jabez, divine blessing was the essence of all he needed. This teaches us something crucial. Seeking God must be our priority above any earthly need or desire. Without God's presence and approval, everything loses its meaning, or as the author of Ecclesiastes might paraphrase, everything is vanity. Now think about your own life. How often do our prayers begin with lists of specific needs, as if we were presenting a shopping list to God? Jabez shows us a different path. Before anything else, ask for his blessing. Because when God blesses, he does so abundantly, exceeding our expectations. Jabez's second request is equally profound: "And enlarge my territory." Here, he asks for expansion and growth. For Jabez, this may have meant physical lands, but for us, it can represent much more. This request teaches us to dream big, to have the courage to ask God to expand our spiritual, emotional, and even professional horizons. But there is an implicit condition in this request. He wants to grow in a way that glorifies God. Note this: your requests should not aim to satisfy selfish desires, but to glorify our Lord. Jabez challenges us to break through the barriers of the proud human heart and trust that God desires our growth, as long as we are willing to use our resources, gifts, and opportunities to honor Him. Enlarge your borders to bless others, to be a light wherever you go. In the third request, Jabez cries out that your hand would be with me, where he acknowledges that all blessing and growth are sustainable only when accompanied by God's presence. This request is a reminder that we are incapable of achieving anything meaningful on our own. Like Jabez, we need God's guidance and power at every step of the way. Practically, how does this apply to your life? Maybe you are facing a challenge at work, in your studies, or in a relationship. Asking for God's hand to be with you is recognizing that without Him, everything becomes more difficult. When God is present, He gives us wisdom, strength, and direction to face any circumstance. Jabez concludes his prayer with a plea for protection. "And that you would keep me from evil, that I may not cause pain." He knew that evil could take many forms: temptations, difficult circumstances, or even his own weaknesses. By asking God to keep him from evil, Jabez demonstrated humility and wisdom, acknowledging his total dependence on God to live a life free from the pain and destruction that sin can bring. How often do we underestimate the impact of evil in our lives? Jabez reminds us of the importance of asking God not only for blessings, but also for protection. Living in obedience and communion with God does not exempt us from problems, but it gives us the assurance that He will be with us amid the storms. As we reflect on this prayer, a challenge arises. Are we praying with the same boldness and confidence that Jabez had? Are we truly surrendering our dreams, pains, and fears into God's hands, believing that He can transform all of them for good? The prayer of Jabez is not just a magic formula, it is a model of how we should approach God with humility, courage, and faith. Take a moment and ask yourself, which areas of your life need God's blessing? Where would you like to see your territories expand? And above all, are you seeking God's hand to guide and protect you in every decision? Jabez's journey remains a reminder that God responds to those who seek Him with all their heart. The prayer of Jabez is much more than words recorded in 2 verses. It is a model for life that reveals profound spiritual principles highly applicable to today. I want you to take note of everything we are about to discuss. Let us dive deeper and analyze in detail the requests made by Jabez. One of the first lessons the prayer of Jabez teaches us is bold faith. Jabez did not hesitate to ask for blessings. expansion, divine presence, and protection. He was not limited by his circumstances and did not shy away from being specific in his requests. This makes us reflect. How often are our prayers timid, almost apologetic for coming before God? Perhaps you have faced challenges that made you doubt whether God cares about the details of your life. Jabez shows us that we can and should pray boldly, trusting that God not only listens, but also desires to bless his children. Another crucial point is the vision beyond limitations. When Jabez asked God to enlarge his territory, he was breaking free from the expectations imposed by his name and his past. He wanted more space, not for himself, but to fully live the purpose God had for him. Often, we let our own limitations or the opinions of others prevent us from dreaming big. The prayer of Jabez challenges us to look beyond human limitations, trusting that God can open doors that seem impossible to unlock. However, there is an important balance here. Jabez did not seek blessings or growth to satisfy selfish desires. He wanted God's hand to be with him throughout the process. This brings us to the third lesson: total dependence on God. He recognized that all blessing and growth needed to be sustained by divine presence. It is a reminder that we are not self-sufficient. We may have talent, resources, or opportunities, but without God, our efforts are in vain. How often do we try to carry the weight of our lives alone? We try to solve problems, make decisions, and even pursue success without inviting God to be part of the process. Jabez teaches us that it is essential to include God in every detail, asking for his hand to guide our steps and strengthen us. Furthermore, let me reiterate, Jabez's request to be kept from evil highlights the need for spiritual protection. He knew that no matter how blessed he was, he would remain vulnerable without God's protection. Evil can manifest in many forms: temptations, adverse circumstances, or even the thoughts that discourage us. Jabez's request reminds us to pray daily for God to protect us not only from external attacks, but also from ourselves and our inclinations toward error. These hidden lessons are an invitation to reflect on our own prayers. Are we seeking God with the same intensity and sincerity as Jabez? Are we recognizing that He is the source of all good things and surrendering our worries, dreams, and fears to Him? Or are we limiting ourselves to superficial prayers, lacking faith or purpose? The prayer of Jabez also teaches us that praying goes beyond simply asking something from God. It is an act of deep relationship. When Jabez prayed, he was not just asking for favors, he was expressing his total dependence and trust in God. His words demonstrate a heart that desires to walk in intimacy with the Creator. This leads us to an important question. How is our relationship with God? Do our prayers reflect a desire to know Him more, or are they focused solely on our immediate needs? God's response to Jabez's prayer is a powerful lesson about divine faithfulness. The text says that God granted him everything he asked for. This does not mean that God is a genie in a lamp who fulfills all our desires. On the contrary, it means that God responds to those who pray with faith, humility, and alignment with His will. Jabez did not ask for anything selfish or contrary to God's purposes. He asked for what was in harmony with the divine plan. Here is the great lesson. When our prayers align with God's purpose, they have power. God desires to bless us and expand our lives as long as we are willing to use those blessings to glorify Him and bless those around us. Have you ever reflected on the prayer of Jabez from this perspective? I believe that just for this lesson, I deserve your like on this video. Now think, how have you been praying lately? Have your prayers been bold or limited by fear and doubt? Have you trusted that God can enlarge your borders and protect you from evil? Like Jabez, you can experience a transformation in your life by practicing sincere, faith-filled prayer. The Prayer of Jabez, though written thousands of years ago, remains profoundly relevant. Its words challenge us to adopt a new approach to prayer and life. But how exactly do we apply this prayer to our daily reality? Pay attention now as we focus on this prayer revealed in the book of Chronicles and understand how it applies to our lives today. First, "Oh, that you would bless me." This request teaches us to intentionally seek God's blessings. It is not about asking for material things or quick fixes to problems, but about recognizing that God is the source of all good things. To apply this, start each day by asking God to bless your decisions, your relationships, and your efforts. Before an important meeting, an exam, or even a challenging moment at home, ask God to be present and for His purposes to be fulfilled in your life. Many times, we might feel uncomfortable asking for blessings. If this happens, reflect on whether what you want to ask for will bring you closer to or farther from God. After reflecting, then ask God for blessings. This is not wrong. Jabez reminds us that asking God is an act of faith. When we seek His blessings, we affirm that we depend on Him, not on ourselves. The second request, "And enlarge my territory," challenges us to step out of our comfort zone. In practice, this might mean seeking growth in areas where we feel stagnant. Maybe you're in a job that doesn't challenge you, a relationship that needs renewal, or stuck in a cycle of anxiety. Asking God to enlarge your territory is asking for courage to face new challenges and to open space for experiences that will bring you closer to His divine purpose. However, this request comes with responsibility. Jabez didn't want larger territories out of vanity or ambition. He wanted more to glorify God and bless others. Similarly, when we ask for expansion, we should ask ourselves, how can I use this to make a difference? Perhaps it's time to use your talents to help your community, share your faith, or support someone in need. God expands our borders when we are willing to use them to impact lives positively. The third request, "that your hand would be with me," is a powerful reminder that we need God's presence in everything. No matter how talented or successful you are, without God's guiding hand, you are limited. This request can be applied to every decision we make. Instead of relying solely on our intellect or skills, we need to seek divine guidance. How can you put this into practice? Before making important decisions, pause and pray. Lord, be with me in this moment. Show me the right path and guide me with your hand. This creates space for God to act and gives us confidence that we are following His will. Finally, "and keep me from evil." This request is incredibly practical, especially in a world full of distractions and temptations. The protection Jabez asked for was not just physical, but also spiritual, as we've discussed throughout the video. Today, this might mean praying for protection against negative thoughts, harmful influences, or impulsive decisions. Perhaps you're facing internal struggles, such as doubts, fears, or feelings of inadequacy. Asking God to keep you from evil is asking for strength to overcome these daily battles. In practice, you can take a preventive posture. Pray before entering challenging situations. Ask for wisdom to recognize traps and strength to resist temptations. Additionally, surrounding yourself with people who strengthen your faith and encourage your spiritual growth is another way to put this request into action. One of the most beautiful aspects of Jabez's prayer is that it is universal. All of us have areas in our lives where we need blessings, expansion, divine presence, and protection. The key to applying it lies in its simplicity. Elaborate words or complex rituals are unnecessary. It's about the sincerity of the heart and the willingness to trust God completely. Imagine how your life could change if you began to pray like Jabez. You could experience a transformation not only in your external circumstances, but also in how you perceive yourself and God. When we seek God with faith, He not only answers, but also shapes our desires to align with His will. Remember that Jabez's prayer is not a magic formula. It is not a set of words guaranteeing immediate results. It is an expression of dependence, humility, and the desire to walk with God. And that is the essence of the Christian life, trusting Him in all aspects, big and small. Now take a moment to reflect. Think of a specific area in your life where you would like to see God's blessing, a space where you desire growth, a moment when you need divine presence, and something from which you need protection. Bring this to God in prayer and begin to put these principles into practice. Like Jabez, you can experience God's faithfulness in surprising ways. The story of Jabez, despite its brevity, is a testimony of how an ordinary life can become extraordinary when entrusted to God. His legacy transcends time and serves as an inspiration for all who wish to live a life of purpose, blessing, and intimacy with the Creator. The Prayer of Jabez is not just a record of a man who prayed and received. It is proof that God cares about every detail of our lives. Jabez had no titles, riches, or status to make him stand out in the genealogy of Judah. All he had was an unshakable faith that God could change his story. And God did exactly that. Jabez's legacy teaches us that our past does not define our future. He was born with a name that symbolized pain, a constant reminder of a difficult beginning. Yet he chose not to let that define him. How many times in life do we allow ourselves to be trapped by labels, mistakes, or traumas? Jabez shows us that with God, we have the power to rewrite our stories. When we surrender our lives to the Lord, He transforms our weaknesses into strengths and our challenges into opportunities for growth. Furthermore, Jabez's legacy invites us to pray boldly. His simple yet profound words teach us to approach God with genuine faith and trust in His goodness. Perhaps you are facing a situation that seems impossible. Perhaps you are afraid to ask God for more, thinking you are undeserving or that He won't answer. But Jabez's story reminds us that God is a loving Father who desires to bless His children. When our prayers align with His will, we can be confident that He will respond. Another powerful aspect of Jabez's legacy is the impact his prayer had not only on his life but also on his surroundings. By asking God to enlarge his territory, he was not merely seeking personal growth. He was seeking to be a part of something greater. This challenges us to reflect. Are our prayers focused solely on ourselves, or are we asking God to use us to bless others? The growth that comes from God always has a purpose greater than ourselves. Finally, Jabez teaches us about the importance of depending on God in every step of our journey. He didn't just ask for blessings and expansion. He asked for God's constant presence and protection from evil. This shows us that no matter where we are in life, we always need God's hand guiding and protecting us. True greatness does not lie in our strength or ability, but in our total dependence on Him. As we conclude this journey through the story of Jabez, we are left with an invitation. Are we living with the same faith and boldness? Are we seeking God with all our hearts, trusting that He can transform our lives? Like Jabez, we can draw near to the Lord with sincere prayers, asking for blessings, guidance, protection, and purpose. Jabez's legacy is a powerful reminder that God does not call the equipped, He equips the called. He transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary stories, as long as we are willing to surrender to Him. And this is the invitation for you. Regardless of your circumstances, trust in God, pray with faith, and allow Him to enlarge your territory. Like Jabez, you too can experience God's faithfulness and leave a legacy of hope and faith for others. Now here's a recommendation where I talk more about Jabez's life. Click on this video to dive deeper into this story that brings rich lessons for your life. May God bless your life abundantly. I'll see you in the next video.